Hello everyone, welcome to our Historical Arms Review. This is a series of artifacts from our museum collection. I hope you enjoy.
The focus will be 4 iconic arms that will take us through the progression from muzzle loader to breech loading to bolt action and then into semi-automatic firearms. Now the one we're starting with today, an iconic piece from history, is the Brown Bess. Now Gary, we've got ourselves here a nice example of the Brown Bess. Now there's a lot of contention about where the actual name originated from. Many refer to it from the browning from the rust because many of these came in the white, and possibly some references to what I had heard, Queen Elizabeth I and Bessie, yes. But the Brown Bess really represented the infantry muzzleloader for the British Empire for a little over 100 years. Yeah, and carried through what was the organized infantry volley fire through the battles of Britain and through the colonies too as well. Now I don't know if you have any important
well, I think the Brown Bess represents as far as the flintlock system could go and still be considered reliable and functional, because it certainly was. But it represents the end of the line as far as flintlock ignition is concerned. It was used throughout the British Empire, and it is a muzzle loader. You take the ramrod out, you put the ball and the powder in the ball in here, you ram it down. But first you would have to cock the piece back, put powder in the pan, close the frizzen, and you cock it. And when you pull the trigger, the flint hits the frizzen, pushes it forward, and you get a flash in the pan, which ignites the powder charge for you. And you were supposed, as a trained militiaman, you were supposed to be able to do 15 loadings in 3.5 minutes. Well, after so many volleys, these guns, because 50% of black powder is not consumed, so it forms a sludge, and they had picks where they would get through the ignition hole to clean that. But what really counted in those days was the bayonet. They would put a 22-inch bayonet on here, and after they had closed so far, then the deciding factor in most of these battles was the famous British bayonet charge. That's what closed the day usually. And it was a structured volley situation. They were not aimed. If it didn't work, when the sergeant said fire, you stood there, and when they said load, you tried to load it again or fix it so that it would fire.
Ranges of engagement weren't very far. They were typically from 50 to 150 yards.
They wouldn't start firing until about 60 yards. Yeah. It's a smooth bore, 75 caliber, but the ball was a 1-ounce lead ball, about 69 caliber, so that it would fit down the bore easily. And it did rattle around, yes, hence you don't get a great deal of accuracy from them. But the most important thing with the Bess was that it did a fine job for the Brits, and when it didn't, you made a club out of it. You could use the butt as a weapon, and you can also use it as a spear for all intents and purposes. So it was a multi-purpose tactical weapon for the British soldier.
Yeah, and a unique feature of them that many people looking at modern firearms get a little confused with is they typically look at the front right here and find that it's a relatively insufficient front sight. Now that's really a misunderstanding, as that really wasn't a sight at all. That was the lug by which you actually mounted the bayonet for the actual bayonet charge once you had about 3 or 4 volleys and fouled the rifle up. I mean, at 60 yards, it doesn't take too many volleys until you're at that distance where it really becomes physical warfare. And that really defined the completion of most of these types of battles. So an example of the smoothbore, a really iconic piece that we're bringing to you from the museum.